This is the Tobago House of Assembly's Post-Executive Council Media Briefing for week ending September 29, 2012. This week, the media is addressed by Secretaries Dr. Anselm London and Whitney Alfred.
On behalf of the Division of Education, Youth Affairs and Sport, I would like to apologize to the parents, teachers and pupils of the Scarborough RC School for the inconvenience caused last week for the closure of the school for repairs and upgrade work. I think we could all agree that the inconvenience was well worth it, because last Sunday when I visited the school, I was greeted by satisfactory quality work. I was greeted by some new desks in most of the classrooms, and I was greeted with some new books. There were boxes with new books which were delivered to the school. The total cost of the top buildings, that is to say the buildings which are on top, there are about 3 buildings to the top, the 2 contractors did the work. One of the building cost approximately $400,000, the other $399,928. The bottom building or the bottom school where repair works are continuing, especially to replace the leaning retaining wall that was spoken about by the engineers. Work is progressing, and hopefully that work should be completed by the end of the week. So next week, students in that building should be able to return to the building. That will cost approximately $500,000. I would like to advise that when the new priest takes up his new posting, the Division of Education, Youth Affairs and Sport will meet with the Catholic Education Board of Management for Primary Schools to continue the discussion for the rebuilding of the new Scarborough RC School. As indicated, what we did earlier was to provide the board with an 840 place school. What we would do, we will review the drawings which are available and determine which aspects of the completed drawings are congruent or equal to the 840 place brief that we provided the board. And it will be those aspects of that brief that the division is prepared to fund. So we will meet with the board and we will agree on what aspect of the building that the Division of Education, Youth Affairs and Sport will be willing to fund. So we await with bated breath the presentation of the budget on the 1st of October to see what will be the overall allocation for the Tobago House of Assembly, but specifically what will be the allocation for the rebuilding of the Scarborough RC School. With respect to the Speyside High School, I would want to indicate to the public and to the staff and pupils of that school that the Division of Education, Youth Affairs and Sport agreed with our experts that for Block D, where the problem of air conditioning is, rather than to repair the centralized unit or to procure or purchase a new unit, we are going to go with individualized air conditioning units in each of the specialized rooms or areas. What we have done already, what our technicians, our project workers have done, is to assess the needs of Block D as well as the entire school. They have assessed the needs of Block D for air conditioning for the specialized units, as well as for the other schools. Where units are not working, we are either going to repair them or replace them. So that assessment has been done. We have received quotations for the supply of new units for Block D, as well as for the entire school. But what we are going to do, we are going to run with Block D. We are going to give Block D the first preference, and then we are going to deal with the other blocks as the principal and staff would indicate which will be the priority area to give attention to. So that what we are doing now is to evaluate those quotations, and then we would award a contract for the supply and installation of air conditioning units for Block D first, and then for the rest of the school. What I have instructed my officers to do is to ensure that a maintenance contract is included in whatever contract we have awarded, so that if the units were to malfunction, a maintenance contract is already built in. So I want to assure the students, the teachers, and the parents of Speyside High School that we are dealing with the problems being indicated at experience at Speyside. Before I end, I just want to indicate again to our teachers, and especially to tutor, but more so to our teachers, that we have almost completed an audit, a staff audit of our secondary schools. We have determined that there are in excess of 100 contract teachers in our secondary schools. So what we are doing now, I have invited the Tobago representative of tutor to meet with us to look at the data we have collected. We are going to meet again with the principals for them to justify the additional permanent positions or teaching staff, as well as the administrative staff, which are required in each of their schools before we finalize our document for submission to the Executive Council and eventually to Cabinet for approval, so that we have completed that staff audit and we are finalizing it. But before we finalize, we promised tutor that we are going to call them in, we are going to look at the data, we are going to discuss our findings before we finalize the proposal. And then finally again, we await with bated breath to see the number of scholarships which our Tobago students would have won. Because even though the minister indicated that the number of scholarships have increased, I think from 350, I think it was, to about 375, I don't think that the names have been released to the various schools as yet, save those persons who won the President's Medal. So we, as the students, await with bated breath for the information in terms of the number of our students who would have won scholarship based on CAPE.
Dr. London then addressed the media.
I have some good news and some not so very good news this afternoon. Let me begin with the good news. And it's, as you know, in a financially maturing economy, if you will, one of the marks that you use to test and measure its financial robustness is its rating. Now, internationally, there are three major agencies. There are some smaller agencies in the Caribbean, but the big rating agencies in the world are Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch. Now, I want to inform you that this week, yesterday, the Tobago House of Assembly engaged in extensive discussions with Moody's with their office out of Mexico. They have offices all over the world, but Mexico deals with the English-speaking Caribbean, in its quest to secure a rating that will be used subsequently in financial markets. This is really back office operations, but it's extremely important as Tobago goes forward financially and with the prospects of entering the capital markets and borrowing. What is particularly good about this is that Tobago is the first sub-sovereign territory in all of the Caribbean to ever seek a rating in international capital markets. We hope to get the results of the rating soon, but I think it's an important step for this island in terms of establishing its standing in financial markets. There are also benefits to us in the sense that things that you need to shape up on, you'll get advice in that regard. But what is good about it is that it provides a barometer by which others can judge us and help us to improve our performance, particularly as the Assembly goes forward and want to issue bonds or other types of securities. Basically, the meetings were extremely positive with Moody's yesterday, and Tobago was well received, and in fact, the analysts were a little bit surprised in some sense that as to the steps that Tobago is taking in that direction. I can't tell you what the rating is going to be. There are going to be constraints, of course, but I think overall, given the kinds of questions that they raised, questions having to do with financial management, questions having to do with borrowing capacity, and other technical things related to headroom and so on, the meetings were very, very positive, and I tell you, I felt very proud to be a Tobagonian attending that meeting, and we'll wait for the results. Now, this kind of very excellent, I should say, reception by Moody's yesterday, I think, and the positive perceptions that they had of Tobago were, in some sense, those perceptions continue to be dimmed by people in Tobago who continue to try to tarnish this island's image. Now, I say this because with some knowledge about how financial markets work, when you spend your time bad-mouthing your economy and bad-mouthing your administration, it causes, you may satisfy your political needs, but what happens, there are consequences in financial and related markets. And that brings me to the absurdities, I have to say, having to do with the Shervan project that has started. You remember the three fabrications. First, the Jack and Coker and Baines, in effect, misled the people of Tobago about A, the price of the land, and B, the square footage of the land. That was settled. Once they failed at that, they moved on to say, well, why don't you build it on Friendship Estate or the racetrack, the race club property? We informed them that the government of Trinidad and Tobago, led by Mrs. Bissessa, had not paid the bill, so you cannot move in. Having failed at that, they moved on to something else and said the building is for farmers, which it is not. And Tobagonians ought to become tired of this kind of fishing expedition. Do your politics all right, but do not try to tarnish the name, not just of individuals, but of the island in which we live. These are going to have important negative consequences for the development of this island. And when all of us would have gone to other places, Tobago will be here forever. And I have to speak up because I will not tolerate and I will not accept the attempt to tarnish this island's financial integrity. The foreigners came out of Mexico yesterday and were quite pleased with what they saw and all the voluminous documents they read well before coming here. And I am not going to have people who, for no other reason but than to tarnish this island's name, engage in that sort of thing. And now that Shervan is settled, the nonsense continues, and it has to stop. This has nothing to do with Secretary Alfred or the Chief Secretary or me or anybody else. It is the island's financial name that is at stake. The latest episode is a bit of nonsense having to do with the Bacalet Indoor Complex. The TOP hierarchy on this island has to get its act together. And by a simple examination of the project that was unsolicited, came to, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. The construction cost of $155 million, as proposed to us, is not the final cost. When you add VAT, when you add all the other fees, you end up with a number something like $233 million. That's the proposal. But they continue to tarnish Tobago's name, suggesting that somehow the price gone up. I am asking Mr. Baines, Mr. Coker, and Mr. Jack, for heaven's sake, and to protect the name of Tobago, get your facts right. Let me tell you a little bit about the process, and it's not even complete, that the Assembly engaged in this regard. You receive a proposal. As before, this proposal was vetted by somebody independent of the Assembly, who made their recommendations and suggestions. And on top of what the experience of Shervan, the revised proposals and recommendations were given to a select committee of public servants from the Division of Education, from the Division of Infrastructure, and from the Division of Finance. Said, look at this, look at the proposals, and give the Executive Council your recommendations. Having done all of that, they said, all right, you may write a letter to the project proposals to express interest. As the lawyers would say, it's an invitation to treat. There is no contract, there is no lease, we have not reached there yet. If we do reach there, the project will go forward. But it is wrong to tarnish Tobago's financial name. That's why I'm here today. When I listen to the reaction of the international people, and small though we are, when I listen to their reaction as to the advances Tobago has made budgetarily and financially over the years, notwithstanding all its imperfections, they are generally pleased with what we have. But we have a group of people in Tobago who it would seem to wish to attack every development thrust in Tobago. And I am going to sit here this afternoon as the Secretary of Finance and tell you that after extensive consultations all over Tobago with all the interested parties, who said to the Tobago House of Assembly, we want an indoor complex, I want to give them the assurance we will continue to work with partners wherever they may find themselves to ensure that we respond prudently, effectively, and efficiently to the Bacalet Indoor Complex situation. But I think this has gone too far now. To suggest that there's some escalation in costs. Escalation in costs of what? No determination has been made as to the project, if we're going to go ahead with it, if the financing will be put in place, and to its cost. But having failed at Shervan, having failed 3 and 4 times at Shervan, you come with this nonsense now trying to slow down the development of Tobago and the complex at Bacalet. Let me also, since my colleague is here from education, we have a similar thing that is moving forward with trying to get many donkey years now to try to get an education building and stop paying rent. That process has started. It is being led by a big merchant bank in Trinidad and Tobago. Nothing has yet been decided. They are studying. And I am flabbergasted when I get a telephone call and emails suggesting to me, what are you people doing in Tobago? Everybody knows what a bolt is, but yet we see soundings of nonsense, and we have to spend money advertising in the papers telling people what this thing about. And they do not understand issues about data confidentiality. There is no lease yet. There is no formal arrangement yet. In the capital markets, you have to watch your mouth. And particularly if you are going to make statements that are false and that have no basis in fact at all. I will continue to defend this process, whether it is at Chauvin that they have now abandoned because they've got all the facts on the table. And it's disingenuous and mischievous. You come with a statement today, and they correct it, you find another piece of paper. It's like in the old days in the computer room, you find a piece of paper on the floor. That's not the way you do research. So I am putting all of this on the table today. The arguments raised against Chauvin were false and have been shown to be false. We are looking at two other projects. The one that involves the indoor complex at Bacolet, that went through extensive public consultations in Tobago, and the people say they want. And if the young people of Tobago want an indoor complex, they will have one. As long as I am secretary here, we will find the wherewithal to make that happen. And we are again looking at what is happening with respect to the education, the millions of dollars we pay in rent each year. That has to stop. And of course, there will be other projects as we go along. I thought I should just bring this to you. Here are foreigners coming to Trinidad and Tobago, quite impressed with what the Tobago House of Assembly is doing. And yet our own is spending its time maliciously and feverishly so trying to badmouth the Tobago House of Assembly, the people of Tobago and this island. It has to stop. Because in the end, it is not individuals that will pay, it is going to be this island of ours.
The secretaries were then questioned by the media.
You are saying that there is no contract
Absolutely
signed, no
none.
lease signed.
Absolutely none. And what the Caristas they do, they bring out little pieces of paper and say they find information. As secretary, intimately involved in this process, if somebody says to you that there exists, as I speak, a contract, bolt or otherwise, for the construction of the facility which we want, that is a lie. Want me to repeat?
A damn lie.
It is a lie. You can put the adjective to it.
Okay.
This does not deny the fact that because of the limited resources, and I hope my good friend Larry Hawaii behaves himself on Monday, that you could never have, it's difficult if you don't have access to borrowing, to get all the funding you want to do things. The Assembly must therefore continue to act prudently to try to get the projects, to finance them, and to pay for them over time. But there is no contract, none at all.
Dr. London.
Yes, ma'am.
A question on the same issue. It was mentioned that the project was being pursued with one particular client and that the opportunity to open it up to others, that opportunity was not made available. Can you comment on...
That opportunity is there for anyone. Anybody, I welcome them. What very often happens in arrangements of this kind, if I were what they call a project proponent, and I see what goes on in your budget, you make an appeal for $100 million and you get 10. If I have access to engineering and financing and so on, I say, aha, those people need to have a project built, and I could finance it for them and I could build it. That is what happens.
Was it made public?
Unsolicited request to build this thing for us. And unsolicited as it is, no decision made at this time. it is another example of the TOP and their company trying to go on this fishing expedition. And I say to you as members of the media, if it is information that you want, why, after 2 or 3 weeks, you have not taken up the Chief Secretary on his offer? Come and look at all the documents. Bring who you want, all the correspondence. Do that. But it does not serve their political mischief-making. But I say to you, we have to get rid of the politics and think of the development of Tobago and the kinds of things that people allow themselves to say about this island.
Okay. In a related question,
sure.
Has the project been advertised to invite people to submit proposals, or is there an intention to do that?
No, I don't quite understand. You have, what happens, oh, no, let you repeat your question.
Okay. I'm asking if it was advertised in any way, maybe in the papers or by some other means, to invite people to submit proposals. If it was done, or is there an intention to do that?
No, absolutely not. Not at this time anyway, because you have an unsolicited proposal. It is like somebody says, people come to the assembly all the time and say, listen, I have a building, I want you to rent it. Can you do so? Or I have a piece of land, would you want to buy it? What does the assembly do? Put out a tender for that? So people come with the nature of project financing is such that people watch you, they identify your needs, and if they feel they make a proposal. That's why we call them project proponents. That is what they do.
When the budget is presented, those documents are available to the public. Anybody could go and buy copies of the budget document from the print tree. And in the allocation to the various divisions, you have these budget items. You have the construction of the head office for the Division of Education. You have the construction of the head office for tourism, the head office for the Division of Agriculture, Marine Affairs. So anybody, any contractor, any people with money could look at these things and they decide, okay, let me go to the Tobago House and offer to do this. And we have all these kinds of offers coming in.
What the lawyers would say in terms of the Bacalet thing, we are at the invitation to treat stage in law. You issue a letter of intent, basically saying we could talk. We had this thing reviewed by quantity surveyors, independent quantity surveyors who gave us advice. We had this thing reviewed by project people who gave us advice. And the people who are going to run it, the public servants et al. In the Tobago House of Assembly, founded a committee of 4 people, say, look at this and advise the Executive Council. How much more transparent you can get? But I have to be brutally frank with you. The whole purpose of this shenanigans is an attempt to salvage what is left of their political lives.
Thank you for watching the Tobago House of Assembly's Post-Executive Council Media Briefing for week ending September 29, 2012. For the Department of Information, I am Sophie Guillaume.